What if there were financial solutions being created by brave and brilliant women, a feminist economic model? A new organization of women is realizing that woman-centered model, lifting up women activists and their real-world solutions for building an economy of our own.
90 years ago, in a famous essay, Virginia Woolf advised a young woman writer that she needed two things: an income and a room of her own. After decades of a pay gap and big money's corruption, we need more than that today. We're creating an economy of our own.
An economy of our own is creating awareness of how rigged the current economy is and how many inspiring solutions are rising because of the work of brilliant women activists.
Women have been cheated and exploited by a mean economy for so long. But that's why we're in the best position to fix it together. And we're starting right now.
The people who have been most excluded by that system are the ones that have the deepest understanding of what has to be transformed. It is from that knowledge that it's very important for them to lead. That is leadership we absolutely have to have.
Screwnomics is my word for the widely applied economic theory, I guess, that women should always work for less, or even better, for free. Together, we can create a living economic ecology. But to do that, we're going to need to make economics far more sexy than it is today. There are feminist economic solutions, real world fixes that are working in communities right now, communities like yours.
An economy of our own is all about creating the space to lift up solutions women are advancing. We're here to celebrate women's way of knowing about money, bring you the work they're doing to shake up the system, and compile critical resources for activists like you who want to bring these kinds of changes into your own communities. Put your head together with us. It's the way we create real solutions, talking together about building an economy that works for all of us. We want an economy of our own. We want it now. And if you do too, join us today at aneconomyofourOwn.org.
Well, hello. I want to welcome you all to a wonderful conversation with some of the leaders of the labor movement that news stories are telling us is being taken over by women leaders. I don't think of it quite that way. I don't think women are taking over, but I think they are rising up to leadership that they've earned. And so we're going to be talking to some of the leaders about those changes and developments in the movement. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a minute here. But first, let's, Carmen, could you share the slide about our assumptions that we're beginning this conversation with here at An Economy of Our Own?
Sure, give me 1 second.
Whoops. There we go. Our assumptions are that money still talks in a male voice, doesn't it? Our financial systems, its rules and its tools were not invented by women, and generally omitted, misnamed, and discounted females. Slavery ended over 150 years ago, but systemic racial exploitation remains. Women have always worked, but only the past 50 years or so have the majority of women and young mothers entered the modern job market. So women and people of color are now business owners and financial managers, yet their caring remains discounted. Economics comes from the Greek word oikonomia, literally meaning household management. We believe women's know-how can change an economy long waged as war to one more wisely waging life. Growing inequality and environmental ruin tells us that we really cannot afford more alpha male only business as usual. So here's our intentions: to grow your economic confidence in your life waging value. Economics is not a realm that a lot of women feel at ease in. We trust each woman's identity is shaped and strengthened by discovery of her own economic truth, her own story. So you might begin learning about economics in silence when you're quiet, seen but not heard. You might feel kind of dumb and disconnected. But the next stage is what's called received knowledge. We listen to voices of others in authority. And tonight we have some of those experienced voices of authority to hear. Next, we'll move on to subjective knowledge. You'll begin to listen to your own inner voice and protect it. You still may be a little fearful, but after that, you come to procedural knowledge. You separate and connect different ways of knowing, interested not only in what people think, but how their perspectives are formed. We ask questions and find some truths more reliable and logical than others. And finally, we come to constructed knowledge, which we'll be building tonight. We recognize that all knowledge is built, not born, and we trust our ability to pursue knowledge by listening to diverse voices, considering complex contexts, and collaborating while communicating our thoughts and our questions. We can hold and remodel our ideas with passion and pleasure. That's one thing we're going to insist upon tonight, is that we enjoy ourselves. Okay, so with that, I'd love for you to connect with AEOO. We're going to put ways to be in touch with all of the organizations that are available tonight in our chat. And so take a look there when we are looking for how to be in touch with people. So I mentioned we've got a delightful group of women who will tell us, that are going to tell you more about themselves in a minute. They're helping to lead the labor union movement, and I'm excited as anyone is about women like Liz Schuler, recently named the first female president of the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations, known as the AFL-CIO to most of us. It's the largest US union federation, and that's a big first. Also, there's Sarah Nelson, the international president of the Association of Flight Attendants, and Mary Kay Henry, who's the leader of the Service Employee International Union, SEIU, which is an organization represented here tonight. So there are big changes happening in the political climate in the labor movement. And I'll just note here that labor organizing, although we often think of Jimmy Hoffa and the truckers when we think of the labor movement, but women have been organizing for a long time. The first worker turnout, which was what workers called it before they called it a strike, largely because the organizers of that first protest were young women working in textile mills in Lowell, Massachusetts. That happened in 1834. And I'll also harken back to Rose Schneiderman, who back in 1911 gave a speech saying, the women worker needs bread, but she also needs roses. I'm sure you probably heard that. But that really began the push for a 40-hour work week, which was very radical at the time. She was saying that a paycheck was important, but so is the time of our lives to pursue our roses, those pleasurable things like family and culture and community, literally the time to recreate our better selves. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us what it is that brought you to this work, who inspired you, what keeps you going. Can we start by welcoming you, Afifa? Afifa Khalik here is from the West Palm Beach in Florida, the Chief of Staff at SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, Florida's Public Service Union. And I worried about you very recently when Hurricane Ian came through your state last month. And I imagine that union members in your union have been of great service to the state of Florida in the wake of that hurricane. So tell us about your journey to this work, Afifa, and who or what inspired you to care about this?
So thank you, Ricky, first of all. Welcome to all the panelists and also the attendees for being here. There's nothing better to do than at 8:15 Eastern Standard Time talking to women warriors. This is the life goal. So thank you all of you for being here. And Ricky, thank you for checking in with us when we were going through the hurricane. It was like very critical time, but then also really concerning because the climate crisis is here, right? It's not like our generations are not waiting for us. So and it's concerning that our state has done nothing to let the wind and water go through in a more effective way through our state, and we're trying to block it, and this crisis will keep on happening. But talking about my journey, I think it was like pretty interesting, right? Unlike some people, I don't happen to join this movement. I kind of like always felt that I was part of the movement. I was like very rebellious child, by nature, growing up. No surprise here. My dad wanted me to be a doctor. Brown families wanted their kids to be doctors. It's like, pretty standard and pretty norm. And I told him I want to be a journalist, right? And he was like, okay, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, pretty sure. But then, long story short, I joined the active professional journalism also, but then I just realized that journalism alone is not going to talk about the injustices that are happening around, and we need to build a larger solidarity and larger movement. So I started working with the women who, and inspiring them to be in the political arenas, in the economic arenas, and taking their life in their own hands back in Pakistan when I was working over there, across the border with women in India, with the solidarity with them, and then also Afghanistan and Bangladesh. And it was like a larger movement that we were building. And it was very inspiring because as a result of those movements, we had like almost 35% representation of women in Pakistan legislative bodies, all the way from the local level to the national assemblies. And those are not just like representation for the sake of the quota, as we call it, but then these women were actually participating in general elections and fighting the typical mindsets that keep us from winning power. And those are the women that inspired me. It's not like a big name, but everyday women who is on the street fighting for her right is my inspiration, right? It's amazing to see that, we can talk about like some women who have like power and control and they're rich and they're money and they're doing that. That is amazing. Keep on doing it. Be the warrior. But then that woman who does not have any power and control, and she is fighting and like trying to uplift not only herself but the generations that will follow her. It's amazing and inspiring. And my son is right here too. But that's my inspiration and that's my journey.
That's wonderful. He's very welcome too. So did you work at all with the, I should save this question. I will save my question because I want to introduce Teresa Mitchell-Dudley from Maryland, who is on the national board of the National Education Association, the Teachers Union, and very active in Maryland, the St. George's region. Is that right?
Prince George's.
Yes, thank you. I thought I had it wrong.
Okay. I might make one or two mistakes a day.
Oh, I try. Well, tell us more about your journey and who inspired you and who keeps you inspired.
So when I was in third grade, my teacher, Mrs. Hodges, told us if we acted up one more time, she was not going to let us go outside for recess. And Donald Ariel, who I still keep in touch with to this day, kept playing. So Mrs. Hodges didn't let us go outside. So I had been watching all of the things that were going on in the news. And my father and I watched the news together all the time. Barbara Jordan, Shirley Chisholm, Angela Davis, all of these powerful women. And I said, look, I've been watching on TV. And if we make some signs and we protest, we can get to go outside. So what do you guys ready with me? So we all made little signs. And when she took us to the gang bathroom break, we sat down in front of the principal's office. And of course, the teacher was very angry. And she turned as red as my jacket and stormed to the principal's office and said, you better do something about this, Teresa Mitchell. And he came outside and he said, who's the leader of this out here? And of course, all the kids pointed at me and folded. And they called my mother. And Evelyn was also known affectionately as Eveline. And when I got home, she said, wait till your father gets home. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. We're having a protest in the third grade. When my dad came home, he sat down with his pack of cigarettes and his friends, Bacardi and Jim Beam. And he said, Teresa, get down here. What are you doing? And I said, I came downstairs. I thought I was going to get killed. He asked me two questions. He said, why did you do what you did? And number two, were you disrespectful to staff? And I explained why. I told him I was not disrespectful. We just wanted to go outside. And he looked at me, took a puff off his cigarette, and he said, you know what? This might not have been the best time for you to have a protest. But if you ever want to protest again, come and get me, and I will protest with you if it's a good idea. He could have beaten the spark right out of me then, but he didn't. And he encouraged me to continue to speak out for injustice when things weren't right. And so all my life, that's how I've been. You know, I had my Enneagram done a few weeks ago, and we are creatures of our experiences. And that experience has lasted me forever. And the only person I've ever really been afraid to speak out against was my dad, because he could always kill me. So the getting into education was very logical for me, as much as I love Miss Ward, my fourth grade teacher, who understood this little child and taught me how to prepare myself. You know, when you're ADHD, it's hard because you're all over the place and people don't understand you, and they want to kind of squash that spark. And I knew I always wanted to be a teacher. I graduated from college. I was working at a car dealership, substitute teaching during the day, and I knew this was it. This was where I was supposed to be teaching. Then I got married. I lost a baby, and it made me even more passionate about the purpose as to why I was in education. And I lost the baby, but understanding why women's reproductive rights are so important in our country, that it needs to be safe for women. When I had to get up out of one hospital that was a Catholic hospital that refused to terminate the pregnancy to go somewhere else because they wouldn't do it, women have the right to be safe. So that's so important for us. When we talk about, you know, this is a women's, in the labor movement, especially in our unions where women are the predominant group, we have to rise up and stand up for our rights and not allow people to put us down and tell us we don't have our destiny to control. So Bertrice Berry, wonderful writer, said, when you walk in purpose, you will collide with your destiny. I didn't start teaching until I was almost 35 years old. Imagine if I started teaching right out of college. Maybe I'd be the president of the EA now. But as it stands, I get to work with 3.1 million educators across the country. I just finished my term as a national board member. Now I'm the vice president of the state of Maryland, but we have 77,000 members, mostly female. So we have to hold on to this and make sure that we maintain our rights to collectively bargain, our rights for women to have the same advancement as men, because even in education, it's not fair, because a young man come in with a degree, and before 2 or 3 years, they got him on the principal's track. Women have to kick, fight, and scream to be an administrator. So that's where I am. That's how I got here. I love my job. I get up every day and pinch myself because I'm just so happy to be working in a field that I know I can make a difference.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Teresa. That's inspiring. And I know people are going to have questions for both you and Afifa, and also for Patty Machek. I think I've pronounced that right. Have I, Patty? Close enough, maybe. Were you, this is your second time visiting us, and you are interested in and have had different, what do I want to say, manifestations of your interest in the kind of work that I think we all can relate to, and that is that domestic and caring work for children that tends to be just expected of women wherever they are, right? So would you like to introduce yourself and what keeps you going and what your latest interests are in this realm?
Yeah, thank you so much. So inspired to be here with you, Ricky, Afifa, and Teresa. It's such a, yeah, I daydream about the types of fields that I'm interested in, which is domestic work, you know, having the type of credibility and support that it could be, you know, quote unquote, a real union where there is local members and chapters. If everybody who did a full-time load of unpaid care and domestic work was considered a worker, and would want to contribute, you know, want to be in a union, it would be enormous. It would be so enormous. So I've never thought of this before. I'm a first generation American from Polish refugees who fled Soviet Poland, and the Solidarity movement was all about union organizers in the Gdańsk shipyards that became so powerful that it led eventually to the fall of the Soviet Union. So I think somewhere in there is that revolutionary spirit of knowing that getting on a soapbox and yelling about things that are wrong is how sometimes you just have to do that. And I relate a lot. I also have ADHD. I relate a lot to that feeling of not fitting in. And I think that is, I don't see that so much anymore as a setback, but more like a defining characteristic. So my entry into this work was becoming a parent. I, before that, was an artist and did a lot of freelance work. And I became very interested in calculating the amount of time that I spent on care work and visualizing it through paintings. And I created a website called billthepatriarchy.com, where anybody could enter the amount of hours they spend on unpaid labor, on transporting somebody, cleaning, cooking, the household management of preschool signups, and you know, housing, and all the things that you have to do when you're doing the emotional labor of making it possible for somebody else to thrive. Oftentimes this does fall to women, as we know. And I've had about 25,000 people on the website, and the average amount of lost wages for 1 year of care work is about $160,000. So when I say that it's work that you do, it is real. The value is real. The wage, the respect and the society in our economy is not built. I mean, it's built on the assumption that we will do this unpaid labor. And most recently, I've been really interested in looking at how to make the work that I do really intersectional. I think I started from a place of, oh my gosh, I'm like an oppressed white mom, and it's so hard for me to take care of these kids, and look at me, I do all of this work. And really quick, as I was kind of, looking at the responses from other people, and as I gained an audience, I learned that I am not oppressed very much at all compared to what a lot of people are experiencing, and that I can also have the role of being oppressed by men, but as a white woman continue to be oppressive in depending on labor that is cheap in order for me to do my work and in order for me to make art. So I had this big sort of reevaluation of of a lot of the work that I was doing, and got involved with an organization called Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network. And their big focus is on organizing people who have domestic workers in their home to be the best boss that you can be. Because I think a lot of times when we talk about organizing, it's like, well, who are you accountable to? And I think I can organize other moms who are frustrated, but I don't think it's enough to just say, I want to fight for our rights, right? Like, and maybe it's because my parents, my mom were house cleaners, maids. When they came to this country, I was, going to nice houses with them in Manhattan, and, looking at all this stuff and seeing it from their side of being, the cleaner, the babysitter, the nanny. And now that I'm in the position of hiring that help, how can I do so in a way that's ethical, non-exploitative? How can we all take those steps to make sure that, it's not just white lady women's march, like F the patriarchy, although I am fully for it. How am I looking at myself as well? So I created this thing called the Invisible Labor Union, and it happened right as the pandemic started, and I couldn't continue it because I had another baby, I have 2 kids, and I had no childcare. So I think that I wonder in the sectors of unionizing that Teresa and Afifa are, do you also, like, how can care work, is it something that keeps us from going, and organizing? How can we organize step in step with our caregiving responsibilities? So yeah, I'm so excited to hear what your all thoughts are on that.
Great. Now, Patty, you were working to include a woman who was organizing with the National Domestic Workers Alliance, which is another big national organization. She wasn't able to join us tonight, but do you want to talk a little bit about her and why it was important to you to try to get her involved in this conversation?
Yeah, so one of the things that has been really great about organizing with the Domestic Employers Network is working directly with domestic worker organizations. And one of the things that they say is no discussions about us without us. That is like, that's like a literal, motto that they have. And I think it's so important because I can talk to the idea of exploitation and immigration and domestic work, but it is imperative that when we talk about, this, Ai-jen Poo, the director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, or president, I'm not sure exactly where she is right now. She says that care work is the work that makes all other work possible, right? So whether you're a teacher or a doctor or whoever is taking care of your children so that you can go and do that work, they deserve protections and some things that things like paid time off and minimum wage, and we don't really have any of that in America. So that's why I really wanted to have them here. And specifically, Evelyn is from an organization called Mujeres Unidas Activas, so Women United, and they fight for sort of social and economic justice within the domestic worker movement. And I think it's especially interesting because there you have a union of workers who are totally distributed. There is not the collective bargaining that they create is, I sort of think of the women's strike in the 70s in Iceland, where for a day, all women just stopped doing everything and said, listen, if you want us to cook and do the laundry and do all this crap, then you need to pay us money for it so that we spend more time taking care of our husbands and our families. How are we supposed to be prime ministers and in parliament? Like we refuse, and they did, and they do get wages and they have a social security net, and they're able to enjoy a lot of the protections that other countries were so low on the list of how we take care of and just completely discount domestic work as work at all. But I think what you're saying, like that I wrote down that the Greek word for economics or economia, household management, like you can't someone needs to feed the people who are doing all of this work, and that work is important and beautiful and valuable. So
thank you, Patty. That's a great way to begin our conversation. One of the links that was in the document for further learning, which we'll be sending to all of our attendants so they can learn more, is a story about the movement in Iceland and their recent move, now that they have a good many women prime ministers and legislators in their country. They have proposed and have enacted a 30-hour work week and have not seen a reduction in their productivity. And 85% of their workers are now working a 30-hour work week. And it just makes you wonder, is that possible here? At one time, the 40-hour work week was thought radical. Rose Schneiderman helped change that. So maybe the next step is, now that we need to ask the question, why is it that back in union days in the 50s, there was this thing called a family work standard, where 40 hours pay should support a family of what were called dependents. We're still called dependents, right? And now it takes more like 80 to 100 hours of wage work to support a family, to rent a suitable house or make a living. So I don't know, it's time to reassess where we are. So a great beginning to our conversation. I think I want to just put it out to all of you, what have you been reading or writing or thinking about that most excites you right now? Is it the, I can tell you what mine is. I just recently wrote a piece for my column at Ms. Magazine about the misinformation that is being generated by dark money, not only through foundations and nonprofits, but through a network of media organizations that are actually presenting themselves as newspaper outlets, pretending to be newspaper outlets so that they look real. They have a name like, let's see if I can think of some, the Houston Sun, which doesn't exist, or Chicago City Wire, which doesn't actually exist, but it looks like it exists, and it's sending out thousands and thousands of articles about things like critical race theory, or the failure of education, or the horror of transgender kids playing sports, terrible things like that, and getting people all riled up by serving up fear in big dollops. So that's what I'm, fomenting about today. Anyone
So are
else?
you talking about the loud voice that is actually sounding, I want to touch on this. When we, several years ago, Jerry Springer was the top rated talk show, right?
Right.
And everybody was Jerry, 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 right? As if it was almost like a blood sport to watch it, to see people fighting.
Yes.
And what it did was it emboldened people to lose their cultural decency, profanity. And trust me, when I hit my foot on the doorstop in the hotel over the weekend and broke my toe, I cussed, okay? However, it's different now. I drove up to Hagerstown, past Hagerstown, going up to Pennsylvania the other day, and I saw a big sign, a big banner hang in front of someone's house that said F Biden. And whether you like Biden or not, I saw some signs that said F Trump previously. It just shows that the polarization and the divisiveness and the vitriolness. And then when you have someone like Donald Trump come along, who reaches down to the underbelly of America, that has been quietly lurking in the background, the racists, the bigots, the misogynistic pigs. Did I say Donald Trump when I said those 3 words? Because I really meant to, okay? We have to look at how our culture has changed so much. Our children think it's okay to tip over a table and fight somebody. And it's dribbling, it's in our schools, because that's what the kids are seeing on TV, on these real housewives of Beverly Hills or whatever. The girls are worse than the boys sometimes. So when we talk about the politics of it, the politics sets a bad example, right? Bill Clinton set a bad example, talking about he didn't have sex with that woman. Yes, you did, Bill. You did. Don't say that was. I love Bill Clinton, but he had his weakness, right? And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm saying it was what it was. And for him to lie to America and say it wasn't sex, now our young people are saying, well, Bill Clinton said it wasn't sex. And it's just so out there, the willingness to beat up on a transgender person because they didn't tell you they were transgender. I saw that on Jerry Springer, and it just, I couldn't believe I was seeing some of it. Now I understand why I was so crazy by it, but it's affecting the children in our schools. It's affecting the way people talk to people on the bus. It's affecting our political structure in such a way that the rancor from the far right and the far left, right, is so loud that those people in the middle are watching and they're saying, what's going on here? You know, and in areas where I live, like Prince George's County, where it's predominantly Democrat, but it's really swayed Democrat on one side. And then the Republicans that are here are dug in. The pro-life, the anti-same-sex marriage groups, the churches that are preaching from the pulpit. And it makes it hard for us, and I say this to wrap up what I'm saying, it makes it hard for us in the movement, right, to take positions that we know are not going to be popular with the churches, right? When we're talking about same-sex marriage, and the churches are going, ooh, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. It's hard to get them to come in alignment with us on some of the other issues, like how do we make sure our schools are adequately funded? Because those teachers are just out of control. So we have a lot to work on as a country and as unions to make sure that we are keeping these elected officials in check about what their behavior is and what they're doing to our country.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think for me, you know, the thing that I have been looking at, and it's frustrating, it's annoying, it's creating tensions, but then you point at it too, Ricky, those dark money groups and how they are investing so much money into our politics, but then also beyond in creating an infrastructure, right? You were talking about the economic ecology, and we have to build an alternative economy because these economic drivers, quote unquote, have destroyed the core of our institutions, right? The core infrastructure that we care about. Talk about the money in politics. DeSantis, how the heck he has $130 million raised for a gubernatorial race, right? And it's unimaginable that people do not take it as a political issue. That if you have so much more money, then where is that money coming from? If you're getting the money from real estate developers and corporate landlords and big corporations, and then institutions like FPL, who has, in fact, if you read the story of what Florida Power and Light has done to Florida's political system, in taking away our rights, right? We talk about those values, but those values are actually, those are funded by these big corporations to take away our rights. Disney is not freaking woke corporation. Disney is doing that because, you know, they need Chinese market and they need those diversified faces in Disney. And Disney is not attacking DeSantis, or DeSantis is not attacking Disney. They're playing hand in hand. DeSantis just gave Disney $528 million in additional tax breaks. So who are they fooling, right? So this money, and I'm like, I have been reading about it. We're doing a lot of good work. We call it People's Budget Florida. And, you know, I'll be putting some links in the chat that, you know, you all should read. And like, you know, stopping that corporate greed. That is absolutely the core that we need in our economy right now. And there is no way that we can win for the working families or establish the democracy, the real democracy that we need in our country without defeating these big corporations. So that, like, you know, that we need to create our own economy. Absolutely 100% key. Like, you know, that's we need to fund those entrepreneurs who are coming from HBCUs, who will not get any investment from the regular investments, those Shark Tank groups, right? They will never invest, and we have to do it. We have to find those Google drivers and the Amazons and like all of those, like who are those children who talk about our social ecology, but then also are willing to make reasonable profit and give jobs to their communities and invest in their communities. We need to have a dollar circulating in our economy, in our communities over and over again. Right now, the problem is the dollar comes to our community. It's not that we are poor. right? Our communities are not poor, they're kept poor, and that's a difference. They're
Yes.
kept poor because they do not have fundamental institutions that build economy within their communities, right? So they earn wages and they earn money, but then that goes out of their communities real quick. The
Mm.
dollar is not circulating in our neighborhood, in our zip codes, and that's a problem. And that's something that I've been reading about. That's something that, I really want to focus on and work on, because in order to build a great infrastructure for our values and for our people, we need to defeat the supply chain. And the supply chain is coming from these big greedy corporations.
Mm.
Absolutely, because you did not hear one large major corporation that is of a service sector that is provide services complaining about immigration. You don't hear Marriott, Hilton, IHG, any of those large hotel chains, and I dare say Disney, right? Where are they going to get employees that they can pay minimum wage to do a job? Keep bringing them in, let them all come in, it depresses wages, we don't have to pay, and we keep making all the money we need to make.
Mm.
And also, let's not forget that those undocumented immigrants that DeSantis, flew from the Texas border to Martha's Vineyard in like a really ridiculous political stunt that is backfiring on him, because he deserved $12 million that could have gone to housing and those people who are hurricane victim. Like, let's not forget that he did not fly those undocumented immigrants who are working in the backyards of his own corporate giants and those big farmer groups and big sugar groups that are funding them. Like, he's not flying those workers out. So it's like those political stunts, like we have to see through them. And unfortunately, there is so much money in the news sector right now. Like, what you are saying is absolutely true, because, we have seen those news sites actually getting their memos approved from FPL's own president. The Florida Power and Light was reading it and reviewing it and editing it, and they were posting on their website. And it's not, if it's not for independent journalists who still care about journalism, finding that out and investigating and exposing the truth, we would not know.
Mm.
So invest in real journalism too. My core journalism principles are coming. So if you are not subscriber to the good journalistic sources, please do right now. That's where the money should be going.
Good one. Can you put some links of ones that you would recommend in our chat, Afifa? That would be great.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm doing it right now.
Great. So what projects? I mean, we just vented things that are really troubling us and are much on our minds. What projects are happening in your area now that you're really excited about or that you feel hopeful about? And I wonder what part women might be playing in some of those efforts.
Well, I'm really excited about the Maryland Blueprint for Excellence, which was passed by our Maryland General Assembly. And what it does is it lays out what a 21st century school is going to look like, a system is going to look like. Starting salaries for teachers by the year 2025 need to be $60,000 a year. There are so many pieces to it. Teacher training, there is career and technical education. And so we are really working hard on making sure that, when something is as massive as this program is, and there's so many pieces to it, that the naysayers say, let's do it all fast. Come on, you can do this. You said you could. Here, do it all fast and very haphazardly, and not take the time to make sure things are implemented with fidelity. So that's what we're working on right now in Maryland, and making sure that our community, our parents, our teachers our businesses understand that this is a major paradigm shift in how we're doing things. The other thing that I've really been working on is how do we make sure that we have educators of color in our classrooms? It is very challenging because a lot of, I would say sometimes we've been our own worst enemy about talking about how bad it is in the building working as a teacher. And so a lot of people don't understand that teaching is a very good profession. The lives that you can change. Now, I mean, if you talk about, am I going to be Beyonce and you're going to be able to put a ring on it? Probably not in teaching unless you have another side hustle. However, the concept of getting up in the morning and feeling good about you doing does have a price. The third thing that we are working on, and I'm so proud of the Maryland State Educators Association, is we have just kicked off this past weekend at our convention, our ESP Bill of Rights for our educational support professionals who work in very low paying jobs. A lot of them work the lower paying jobs so they can have benefits, the medical benefits, because the other jobs that they work don't give them medical benefits. But we shouldn't have somebody who's working as a teacher's assistant in a school make a decision. Well, I can go work at Sheetz at a gas station and make more money than I can make working for the school system. And they can be qualified in everything. So the ESP Bill of Rights is meant to raise the wages, create job security, protect people from privatization, which is a big thing in our educational support professionals, and making sure that collective bargaining rights are held in place, making sure that our support professionals receive the honor and the dignity that they deserve. Because I started out as a substitute teacher, and then I was an educational support professional. I was Miss Dudley, the computer lab lady, and I know how little I was making. So we have to make sure that we work on those. And those are things that keep me up at night right now, is how do we do all this at one time and not lose sight of, can Johnny read? We got to keep things moving while we're working on all these other things.
Now, it sounds like there are a lot of women involved in these three proposals, these three actions. Yes.
Absolutely, because a majority of the folks in the good people working in the educational community are women. And in the teaching profession, there are definitely more women than men. I mean, if you're looking to get married as a teacher working around a schoolhouse, you're not going to find Mr. Wonderful there. So it is very challenging, and someone said, well, there's not enough men in the profession. Well, if you pay people, I mean, how hard is that to figure out? Because if it's a man and he wants to provide for his family, right? You can't provide for your family. It's very hard. A lot of our teachers, I've rent rooms out to teachers because in Prince George's County, they can't afford to rent a house or buy a house. It's very hard. The standard of living is the cost of living, is so high.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's hard on single women, especially.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Patty, did I cut you off earlier? Did you have something you wanted to?
No, I think the thought I'm sort of coming around to is similar to what y'all are saying about, like, the dark money, like following the money, and that budgets and these things are reflections of our society and their decisions that we make and things that we choose to uphold. And I think one of the things I've been doing that has helped keep me inspired is that if we do keep speaking this truth, and if women are continuing to get into these positions of power, that it is a matter of time, that the priorities that we have, and that the way that we sort of express them and say no to these systems, I think sometimes it can feel like, is anybody listening? Does anybody care? And I love I think it's the Alice Walker quote, like, people, the most common way people give up power is not thinking that they have any. And I've just been, I don't know, that just individual organizing, talking to my mom, talking to people I disagree with, and just not getting quiet about it, and saying, oh, you shouldn't support this company, they're evil, they do this, and just, kind of exposing the way the sausage is made of capitalism. I spend so much time, you guys probably spend so much time reading and educating yourselves on this, and then going and bringing other people in and trying to radicalize other people and get them into these movements. That, to me, that one-on-one organizing work, and the hope that if I continue to share this, that there is some sort of point to that. I think otherwise it would just be so hard to, think, this behemoth of dark money and all, everybody who just does, let alone, talking about immigrants or domestic work, just such base level disagreements about rights. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it seems to me that's one of the powerful things about unions, is that there are these democratic organizations who hold elections to elect representatives within their own organizations. That is like a mini model for how society or how communities can operate in a more democratic way, so that more and more people can have the opportunity to have those one-on-one talks and arguments. Arguments don't need to be the nasty things that we're talking about on Jerry Springer. There are ways to have civil conversations and remain friends. And so unions seem to be a good place to practice that.
Yes, Ruth is laughing.
I'm laughing because when I look at how long it took, I love NEA, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't until 2014 that the National Education Association had 3 women running the organization. Becky Pringle, Lily Eskelson was the president, Becky Pringle was vice president, and Princess Moss was treasurer. That's the first time in the history of a organization, of a labor union. And I will not let it slide that NEA is the largest labor union in the country. And when we see that type of change occurring, we have to support it and make sure that these women know. I send Becky text messages all the time, you go girl, because it's hard out here for a woman. I mean, I'm just watching a FIFA and she's got her son crawling all over her. And I'm not dogging you, I'm really not. But what I'm saying is we go through more as women being out here in the trenches. I mean, when I ran for county council here in Prince George County, I had a woman tell me, oh, you need to stay home with your children. You shouldn't be out here running for office. What do you why aren't you at home? Because I was carrying, I had one under each arm. But you know what? Other women who got it took my kids when I had to go speak. They would take the kids and hold on to them and say, I got them. My babysitter used to babysit for me for free most days in the evenings because she knew I was out campaigning. She said, I ain't got no money, Miss Teresa, but I sure will help you. I'll keep the kids for you.
Oh, that's so much.
We got to lift women up. We're so used to being, I hate to say it, catty, so to speak, she's this, she's that. You know what? She's powerful. Afifa is now my friend. When she started talking about Disney, I was like, I'm with you 100%, right? Patty, I feel what you're saying about kids, because when I had my 2 children, it altered my whole universe as a mom. And I've got this Teach for America teacher down living with me who can barely pay for her childcare. $270 a week.
Crazy.
A starting teacher. I told her, don't worry, she came to me talking about things. I said, look, I promised you I would take care of you. It is what it is. I know what your bills are. I can afford this house either way. But we got to look out for each other like that, and take care of the world, because who are we? We are the women. We are the nurturers. We are the ones that are supposed to be raising people up, not dogging people down. And when I see these women on Fox, talking that trash about things that they have no idea what life is really like out here for people, I just get so fierce. I want to throw the TV, but I paid too much for it.
Well, I wonder what you can tell us about what you see in the labor movement and the new phenomenon of women in leadership. Do you think there is a chance that women will unite more across union lines and beyond union lines? Because I was inspired by your, I forget how exactly you said it, Teresa. I think you said you were interested in collective bargaining for the community, widening the conversation to include the wider community. And so I wonder, among democratic organizations that are unions, is there a movement among women and men, why not men too, to think about these issues of childcare and of life with the roses in our lives, and how important they are, time being one of those roses.
They said that I read a study the other day that said life expectancy for women is shortening and becoming almost equitable with men. And part of the reason is, and I know this is the reason, is that women we're doing double duty, right? We're working out, we're slaying and dragging out in the field like men are, and we're nurturing and raising the babies when we get home and trying to get it all done. And the anxiety and the stress, that'll kill anybody. But since Sodom and Gomorrah, we have been sold a bill of goods, right? About who should be in power, right? The rich people should be in power. Who said that? Why should the rich people be in power when all they're doing is stealing from the poor people? And then most of the people don't have all the resources. We're the 99%, right? So women have come a long way. You've come a long way, baby. We're not there yet. Just like minorities in America, we're not there yet. I mean, all you got to do is look at the United States Senate. You see any Black women in the United States Senate? Not one.
We'll send one. We're sending Val Demings your way.
I sent that lady some money myself. Because we got to really start looking at it. And it can't be just race. Look, I'm all about understanding the demographics and race, but women as a whole have to, because let me tell you something, the Supreme Court would have never overturned Roe versus Wade if the Senate was 50-50. It never would have happened. If it had been 50% women and 50%, I personally think we need to have a change in our Constitution that our United States Senate should be 50% those who identify as women and 50% of those who identify as males. I don't care if you want to be whatever you want to be, right? But we've got to balance it out somehow, because it's not fair to women what's going on. I mean, gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, anybody who needs to get an abortion, come to Maryland. You can stay at my house. I don't care. This is just crazy what's going on in this world.
It is. So, Afifa, do you have any thoughts about how women in unions are thinking together collaboratively about some of the issues that we're talking about?
Absolutely. I think I rarely see a man in leadership role anymore amongst the movement people that I work with, right? It's like, pretty rare, and it's just inspiring how much women have reclaimed their space, right? And Teresa is absolutely right about, like, there's so much more that needs to be done, right? We're not even halfway there yet. In fact, we took a step forward and we have like 10 step backs now, like with these crazy laws that are being passed, and like, how unfortunately, like, I was phone banking one day, and I called one of our member, and when I was talking to her about election, her husband took the phone from her. And he was like, I know absolutely everything that, these democratic blah, blah, blah. And, my wife is going to vote the way I will let her, I will tell her to do. And I'm like, dude, well, you better not be my husband. Because right, because in my household I fill the ballots for everybody. It's it's kind of crazy how much we have to still do. And absolutely about the collective bargaining that Teresa brought up, right? It's we can no longer afford to be a union as an institution. We have to build a union as a movement, right? Why we are only representing 6% of America in private sector, and like 11% of America in public sector. We need to represent the workers where they are at, right? And it has to be 80%. We have to go back to the community union concept that we are talking about as a movement and your collective right as a worker and working families. And who better to talk about this than women, right? One of my gurus once said, and it's still stick with me. He said, look, Afifa, men know two things. He said they know either to fight or flight. There is no in between. They will either go physically and like attack, or they will just run away if they're weaker. He said women can't afford to do that because they have their children, they have their families, they need to nurture everything, right? So they then sit down and negotiate. And he said a negotiation is a thing that has changed the society and reformed the society forever. It's not the wars that has done it. It's like when sane people decided to sit down and talk to each other about the issues that they care about. And that's when the changes happen. And like, that's what we do. Like if any of you have like, children, what negotiations means. Like these kids are out organizing us every single day, and we are bargaining with them regularly, right? And they're winning, by the way. But we know how to negotiate. And that's like, the quality that we have seen, that is, I'm not saying it's unique to women, but we have exercised it in so much better way.
So what helpful developments within the union movement do you see along the lines of, common cause, common language, common efforts? When can we pick up our pots and pans and have a pot and pan revolution? I'm asking, I guess. Any news on that front here in the United States? Is it out of the question? Are we all overcome by Teflon cookware or what?
I think it's needed, right? I think the issues sometime with the labor movement is that we are more like labor institutions than labor movement, right? So it's that solidarity of sitting down together and discussing it, like, sometime. And it's, it's not that people don't want to do it. It's just like, we are in a constant survival battle as unions, like worker suppression bills and all of that kind of stuff. So we're trying to protect what we have. Like there's no progressive movement in America. It's a protective movement in America that we are constantly in. So it's like, I think, again, as I said, let's address the core issues first, right? That we are out resourced by these corporate giants. So we need to take them down first. it's a David versus Goliath battle, right? We will rely on our skill set, and we are focusing on their weak points, and we are becoming more disciplined in our messaging, in our approaches, in our strategies, and where to do and what to do. Like, I'm a Muslim, so I am always very careful in selecting the words of like fight and battle, right? But like it's guerrilla warfare for the working families right now. So we need to act like one, right? And once we the immediate threat to the labor movement, we take care of that, we take care of like, some of these giants. I believe that the realization is there amongst the labor movement that, the women of the movement have to do it. Like, that's our core responsibility.
Well,
Look at him. I mean, we've got to support our brother and sisters that are, I mean, you got Amazon, you got Starbucks, you got these big corporations who are making heck of money. I was gonna say something else. I realized I was being videotaped. Heck of money, right? On the backs of our laborers in our country. And the big myth when we were negotiating our contract here was that our teachers were making enough money. They don't need to make any more money. And the fact that when it was the recession, we didn't get our steps for 3 years was not that big of a deal until we started talking to the people in the community. And we did what we called bargaining for the common good. We included students, we included parents, we included social organizations in the community, and had them come and take part at our negotiations hearings. It was open to the public, anybody could come, and we had people testify. What do you want to see in your school? Well, I want good air conditioning for my child. The same schools that your children are learning in, our teachers are teaching in. And so if you don't have the basic human needs, like if your children are going to school out in a temporary, which have now become permanents, and you've got 2 teachers in the room, and there's supposed to be 2 teachers in the room because of special ed, and you send one child to the bathroom, that teacher has to escort that child that leaves that one teacher in that school, in that classroom by themselves, outside, because they can't go all the way in this building by themselves, especially a little kid. So we really tried to look at that. The Bill of Rights for our educators, for our educational support professionals, we're working on that. Every time I buy anything or support anybody financially, I always make sure that their hearts are in the right places about it. Mm-hmm. If it's something like, I even asked my the guy that does my 403B, I said, who are all these accounts? He said, well, well, you should know. I asked the people at NEA member benefits, because we do a lot of money with them. Are they labor friendly? Are they women friendly? I mean, I don't know if anybody's shopping in Hobby Lobby, but you shouldn't be. Chick-fil-A, but people still go there because, oh, I like the chicken. Okay, when it's your brother who they're saying that can no longer love who he wants to love anymore and can't get married, then you go get your chicken sandwich and shut up. Right?
Yeah.
Patty, you just nodding your head over there. I know there's a bunch of stuff going on.
You're saying all of it. I just I'm sitting back and basking in it's very profound. I agree with all of it. I think the things that I'm seeing that I'm trying to support are, being in solidarity with local movements, lending my support, being, and I think it can be so easy to get entrenched in, in your one cause and the little, we have your benefits or your things. And I think that looking up and questioning people and divesting from, we talk about investing, but how can you divest from things? How can you encourage other people to divest? And
it does make it, you know, it's like when you're doing that and you're being that leader, I think it really does make a strong impression on other people, and that if we just keep doing that, it is doing something. That, yeah, I think we have here in Oakland, I'm in California, there are just so many, you know, incredible organizations and community projects that, yeah, we all kind of show up for each other, the parent, you know, the parents and the teacher unions and the longshoremen and you know, people who are maintenance workers. Just it does has this feeling of just a real history of having you know, knowing that you need the support of these other organizations, and that's just been so amazing to see. And also, just as somebody who's been a stay-at-home mom and kind of stuck with kids, it's like, well, I can still do text banking. I can do a car, you know, parade by the mayor's house when they're trying to double the police budget. I can, you know, there are these things that maybe it doesn't seem like, you know, or, oh, we're in, you know, a progressive city, but it's, you know, it's hanging on, hanging on for dear life over here for the things that we have and trying to get more. So yeah.
Call my buddy Keith Brown, who's the president of the Oakland Educators Association.
Oh, I love them.
He is doing an amazing job with getting more progressive candidates on the school board there in Oakland. And working on making sure that they don't close some of the schools that are important. So you can go call Keith, tell him you're ready to work, tell him I sent you.
I'm ready. Okay, I will. I've been organized.
So listen, I have some slides I'd like to show, just to show off what the results of are that of collective labor movement in the results in people's lives. I've got some maps. Carmen, could you show us, I think it's slide number 3.
Sure, give me 1 second.
And those of you who have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A section here. This is from the National Women's Law Center, who says unions are really good for women. And this shows the top third of states, 18 states in the lightest colors, are way ahead in pay and benefits to the middle third, and the bottom third, which is those right to work states that are in the darker colors. Women generally are ahead by how much? It's something like $211 a month, or even more than that, possibly. I don't have my learning document in front of me, but enough to pay for childcare. So unions in that top third have made a difference in the pay and for women workers. Next slide. Here it is in another graph. You can see the green line is unionized men, and then the dotted green line is, or no, the purple line, solid line, is non-union men. And you can see their pay benefits over time. And then the dotted lines are unionized women up here with the green, and the purple is non-union women. And you can see they're lagging way behind. That's that pay difference I was pointing out in the other map. And this is a national phenomenon and very recent, 2000 to 2020. Next slide. Yeah, this is interesting too. What women make for every dollar white men make by race and ethnicity and union status. The pay gap continues to exist, except among Asian women. I found this kind of interesting. It looks like Asian women are making more than Asian men. Have you heard this before? It's news to me. Again, this is from the National Women's Law Center. But you can see the pay gap for Black women who are unionized is much better than the pay gap where they non-unionized women at 69 cents here. And over for Latinas, it's 77 cents for to a man's dollar, white man's dollar. If they're unionized, 63 cents if they're not. And for white women, it's 87 cents if you're unionized to a dollar, compared to 81 cents to a man's dollar for the pay gap. So unions have made a difference there, but it's as you and you've all been saying, it's not, we've still got some more work to do, don't we? Yeah. So I invited people to put questions in the question and answer section, but you know what? I think we've almost run out of time here, so we might not have time for it. We've got a new message here. Oh, yes. So I think we probably need to wrap up. I wish we had more time to talk. I think we should get together again and touch base again maybe next year and see how far have we come. What are we excited about? We've got a big election in front of us, and
right. Vote, 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 vote,
yes, vote. Be sure to do that. And let's see where we are in future. It sure sounds like we've got some exciting things going. So I do wish we had more time, but we're coming to a close here. So I think, Carmen, would you share another slide with us? Thank you, my beautiful panel here.
Sure, and give me 1 second.
Okay. So check out the chat, make a copy of it. We'll send you a copy of the chat when we send you a recording and the documents for further learning. So we're just going to end with the thought of "In women we trust." We've got an asterisk there that says, "And the men who love us." We do have a lot of really great men who do love us, and we appreciate them. They're the ones who respect us and listen to us. Together we can build an economy of our own, and there are lots of ways to stay in touch with us. You want to activate the slide, Carmen? Just hit the button. There it is. We've got a web page that you'll see down here in economyofourOwn.org. We've got a YouTube channel with lots of conversations about women economic leaders. We've got, whoops, what's happening here? It's bouncing. Yes, here we go. We have social media at Economy of Our Own. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We have a monthly insider update newsletter that I hope you'll subscribe to and contribute to. If you've got something exciting happening that you'd like to get the word out, let us know. You can get in touch with us at the organization. Invest in women through our giving circle. It takes a little bit of money to provide these Zooms of our own, and it's a good thing to be part of a giving circle, even if it's time that you're giving us. We'd love to have you join us. We have got Zooms of our own conversation in the future. We'd love to know what you'd like to be learning about next and hearing about more. If you like the idea of our getting together again to talk about the labor movement, put your vote in the chat there and let us know that, will you? And then I have here, register for a learning circle. Learning circles are like the next step beyond a conversation like the one we've been having that takes a closer look at how do you do it exactly? What are the steps that are necessary? So far, we've got a public banking learning circle materials, but we're interested in the next year to produce another learning circle on a subject that we've got a survey up on our website. If you have a subject that you'd like to learn more about in the economic realm, fill out our survey and let us know what you'd like to know more about. And any ideas that you have for suggestions for how we could do things better, let us know. While I'm thinking about that, you know, some people have had trouble registering at Eventbrite. If you had trouble with your getting on the Zoom of our own, will you let us know? You can do it in the chat, or you can drop us a note later. And with that, I'll just say thank you so much again, Teresa, Afifa, Patty, and our Latina sisters who couldn't be here tonight, but we heard you. And we hope
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure. Good night to everyone out there. Thank you for joining us. You've been a great, great group, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you,
Bye now.
Elvin. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Stephen, our chat person. Yes.